Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Kat. So for today's video, I'm just going to go over the books that I read since my last recent reads video, which was about 2 months ago. Since then, I've read about 7 books in total. Starting with Some Shall Break. This is by Ellie Marney. This is book 2 in the None Shall Sleep series. I believe that's what it's called. So in this book, Emma's dealing with the trauma from the events that took place in the previous book. However, there's a new serial killer on the loose and the FBI needs her help again. This new copycat killer's method of killing is very similar to the serial killer who abducted Emma years ago. With the help of Travis and convicted killer Simon and Simon's sister, Emma uses her knowledge from her experience of being kidnapped to help find this serial killer. So overall, I gave this book a 4.0 star rating. The first half of this book was pretty slow paced. Honestly, it was slow, it was dull, it was dry. The last half of the book, mainly the ending part, was far more interesting and way more fast-paced too. And to be honest, I feel like the ending really saved the book for me because it was not it. It was not that exciting. A lot of the dialogue between the characters was very dull and boring as well. It felt very repetitive. Most of the dialogue, honestly, was just the characters asking each other how they're doing, if they got enough rest, if they need coffee. Honestly, that was the majority of conversations happening in this book. In this book, Emma was not a likable character. I understand she's had a lot of trauma from the first book and then her past experience of being kidnapped, but she was very pretentious, she was not likable, and she was making some stupid decisions intentionally. For example, she accepted drugged water from a stranger who happened to be the serial killer. She knew it was drugged water. She knew he was a serial killer. Somehow she knew he was a serial killer, but she knew that the water he was giving her was drugged. And she knew what the side effects were going to be, but she drank it anyway. And then serial killer somehow escapes and she blamed herself for not being able to take him down while she was drugged. And it's like, how does that make sense? Honey, you were drugged. What could you have done? You are under the influence. You shouldn't have taken water in a cup from a stranger to begin with. And you knew it was drugged and you took it anyway, and then you're going to blame yourself for not being able to take down the serial killer. Well, how could you have done that if you were not able to move, if you were not conscious? It just didn't make any sense. She was also very defiant. She wouldn't listen to any authority figures. She wouldn't listen to any of the FBI agents. She always felt like she was right and she knew more than these experienced agents because she has had experience of being kidnapped by a serial killer. So she felt like she knew more and that they needed her and that the FBI agents could not do anything without her help. So it's very a pretentious mindset, and it just made her even less tolerable. There was some simmering tension between her and Travis. There was definitely some attraction, but there was no build on that attraction at all. It was actually super boring, and all she did with Travis, who was supposed to be her FBI partner, was talk about their trauma and how tired they were. That's really all the conversation they had. In this book, Simon, the teen serial killer psychopath, and his sister were the only interesting characters in this book. They have a weird brother-sister relationship, if you know what I mean, but they were the only interesting characters. Their scenes were the only interesting scenes. Also, just kind of on a grand scheme of things, the fact that the FBI agents allow 2 teenagers to act as consultants for these cases, it just kind of seems ridiculous overall. I know I have to suspend my disbelief, but it just seems ridiculous because which FBI agent would just bring on 2 teenagers unless they're really talented and skilled and they have unique abilities? Would they just allow teenagers to consult on cases and interview serial killers? You're putting them in harm's way. But overall, the book wasn't terrible. Like I said, the ending really saved the book for me, and the ending was left on a cliffhanger, so it's set up for book 3, which I'm super excited to read. Next, I have Lock Every Door. This is by Riley Sager. This is my first Riley Sager book. And this book basically is about Jules, she's going through some financial hardships and just kind of going through a rough patch in life in general. So when she sees an ad to babysit an apartment, she jumps on it. This apartment is at the illustrious and super secretive Bartholomew Building, which is very famous, but nobody really knows what's going on in there. Upon arriving at the Bartholomew, she notices that a lot of the residents are very rich and famous people, and that they are very secretive as well. One day, one of the other babysitters, Ingrid, disappears out of nowhere, and Jewel starts to dig deeper into the past of the building to see what is going on. When she starts digging into the building's more infamous past, she discovers more than what she's bargained for. So I gave this book a 4-star rating. I did really enjoy Riley Sager's writing. I thought it was very immersive, how he kind of pulls the reader into his world. There were a lot of like creepy moments in the book too, so it was really good when I read it. I believe like October, I think, is when I read it. But it was very good writing. I did enjoy like the small little pockets of humor in an otherwise very fast-paced and thrilling book. I also did like the commentary of how it is to be in a financial hardship and what it's like to hit rock bottom. I feel like a lot of young people who are struggling and find themselves in financial hardships sometimes get lured and scammed, and they end up in situations that can be very life-threatening or dangerous, such as the main character. But also, I feel like a lot of people can relate to what it's like to go through financial hardships and what it's like to not have money and to just be desperate and to be in situations where you're trying to scrap every penny that you can. So I feel like the commentary about financial hardships was pretty good. The ending was not that satisfactory, to be honest. I liked the build-up of where the ending was going towards, but once I found out what the ending actually was and what the residents were actually up to, it was not that interesting. It didn't seem like a really crazy plot twist. It just felt very unsatisfactory. Overall, it was a very interesting book. I did enjoy it. I did like the little plot twists here and there, so that was fun. And I would love to read more from Riley Sager. Next, I have The Wicked Deep. This is by Shea Ernshaw. In this book, 2 centuries ago, in a small coastal town of Sparrow in Oregon, there were 3 sisters called the Swan Sisters who were accused of witchcraft, and they were drowned in the ocean. Every summer for the next 2 centuries, each of the Swan Sisters would come out of the water and they would inhabit one of the local girls' bodies. And they would use the body to lure boys into the ocean and drown them as a way to take revenge on the town. One summer, an outsider named Beau moves into town because he's looking for answers to events that happened in his past. But will Beau be able to resist the sisters' call? Local resident Penny has to protect him at all costs while also keeping secrets of her own. So I really enjoyed the writing in this book. It was beautiful. I gave it a 4.5 star rating, by the way. The writing was so atmospheric. It really gave that small coastal town vibe, and really made you feel like you were in a town where the weather was gloomy and rainy and cloudy, and what that felt like. I feel like her writing really set the atmosphere and tone of the book, so you really felt like you were there kind of experiencing this environment. I felt like the writing also just flowed very well, and it really illustrated what the characters were feeling and experiencing. I also did really love the romance between the 2 characters. I felt like it was well paced, and I just loved their moments. I thought they were really cute. After finishing this book, I read some reviews of other people, and they said that they felt the romance was very rushed between the characters, but I did not feel that way at all. I just felt like the pacing of their romance and their chemistry and how they developed feelings for each other was pretty good. I don't think it was rushed at all. I really enjoyed all their moments. I thought their relationship and everything, it was very cute. I also really enjoy the characters in this book. I really felt like with the writing, we were really getting deep into the thoughts and feelings and even just the personalities of the characters. So I feel like the characters were really fleshed out very well, and you really got to know the characters on a more personal level. Guys, sorry my battery died, so I had to charge my camera, but sorry if the lighting is a little bad because it's getting later in the day. So I'm going to try to go through this quickly. Picking back up where I left off with The Wicked Deep, the plot twists were really fun to read. Some of them I figured out, but still they were really fun. One plot twist at the very end I did not figure out, and that one was pretty intense. Overall, I did really enjoy this book. There were a lot of sad moments, and it was very heartbreaking at times, but it was very well written. I'm not a huge fan of reading about like cold, gloomy, rainy weather. I don't even like that kind of weather to begin with. It gives me like seasonal depression, but I did enjoy how atmospheric this writing was, so I'm really excited to read more by Shea Ernshaw in the future. After that, I have My Best Friend's Exorcism, and this is by Grady Hendrix. This is my second book by Grady Hendrix. I gave it a 3.5-star rating. I have a more in-depth reading vlog of this on my channel, so if you want to check out a little bit more of my commentary, feel free. But basically this book takes place in the 80s, and it revolves around two best friends. During a really bad acid trip, one of the friends gets lost in the forest, comes back possessed by a demon, and it's up to her other friend to find a way to exorcise the demon out of her best friend's body. Overall, I liked the book. It was pretty average. I feel like I hyped it up more in my head, and it wasn't as great when I read it, but it was still enjoyable. A lot of the nostalgia I didn't understand, so it made it a little hard to get into the book, but nonetheless, it was still a fun read. Overall, not bad, but definitely not as awesome or amazing as I hyped it up in my head. After that, I have The Lightest Object in the Universe, and this is by Kimi Eisel, or Eisel. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, I apologize. I honestly don't even want to really talk about this book. I gave it a 1-star rating. It's basically a dystopian, like post-apocalyptic book. That's all I really know. I don't know what else happens in this book. The two characters on opposite sides of this country, one's in the West Coast, one's in the East Coast, they like each other or something and they're trying to find each other. It's just honestly nonsense. Like, this book is nonsense. I'm not attacking the author, I'm just attacking the reading material. I did not like it. I'm sure this book is for someone, I don't know who, but to be honest, I would not recommend this book. It was not interesting. It was so boring. There was a lot of stuff, but nothing was happening. And I can't even tell you what happened in this book because I was skimming like 2/3 of the book, and even the skimming felt like super long. Like, I felt like I was taking a long time just skimming the book. It definitely is one of my least liked books that I've ever read. Like I said, I feel like there was just a lot of information in the book, but nothing propelling the plot forward. And there were a lot of shifting in point of views, so like the point of views kept switching, but you would never know when. You would never know when. There was no indication that the point of view switched. Like, one paragraph would be one character's point of view and the next paragraph would be another character's point of view, but you don't even know who that character is. You don't even know when the POV switched. So that was really just annoying to even read. And there were POVs from characters who I felt like didn't need POVs. So honestly, that was one of the reasons I really disliked this. I don't think I've ever given a book a 1-star rating, but there's just, I can't even talk about my reading experience because there was not even much of a reading experience. When I read some of the Goodreads reviews, there were some people who did enjoy it. I don't know how. I don't know what kind of mindset you have to be to enjoy this book, but there were some people who enjoyed it. I skimmed it, I'm done, and it's going away. After that, I read A Brief Welcome to the Universe. This is a non-fiction book about astrophysics, and it's by Neil deGrasse Tyson, Michael A. Strauss, and J. Richard Gott. This book is another book about one of my favorite subjects, which is astrophysics, but it's another book that I ended up skimming, unfortunately. It's hard for me to rate nonfiction books because most of the time they're factual, but based off of my experience and engagement with this book, I gave it a 2.5-star rating. This is just like a brief intro to astrophysics. There was a lot of information. I feel like too much information for an introductory book. There are a lot of like large numbers thrown at you, like a lot of constants, a lot of distances, and just very large numbers that astrophysicists work with. But if you're not a numbers person like me, sometimes these larger numbers can be harder to digest. But it felt a little too dense for me, and it felt a little dense for an intro book. It was almost written like a textbook. And then my most recent read that I actually just finished today is Krampus and this is by Bram. So this book I gave a 4-star rating. This is my second book by Bram. This book basically is about a man named Jesse who's down on his luck. He's a struggling singer-songwriter, and he finds himself in the middle of a centuries-long feud between Santa Claus and Krampus. It almost sounds ridiculous, but in this story, Santa Claus and Krampus, they hate each other, they're trying to kill each other, and there's a bit of a spin on Norse mythology where Santa Claus is a descendant from Odin, and Krampus is a descendant of Loki. Not only are Santa Claus and Krampus trying to kill each other, but they're also trying to find this like magical sack that has magical abilities. So overall, I really did enjoy this book. I did enjoy like the spin on Norse mythology, and it was a very atmospheric book. I really did enjoy the atmospheric writing, and I felt like I read it at the right time. Just like with Slewfoot, I felt like I read this book at the right time. So I feel like with Bram, timing is very important, because I have a feeling if I read it during any other time that's not the holiday season, I probably would not have enjoyed it as much. But I love the writing, and it really felt like I was on an adventure with Krampus and his companions. The characters in this book, they were all like very morally gray. You did not know who to root for. Like, I did not know whose side I was on or who to root for, because none of the characters were good or bad. They were just struggling. And I feel like that's kind of how I see humans, right? Like, none of us are good or bad. We're all just struggling, and we're just trying to find a way to get out of the struggle. The plot overall was good. I did like the build-up and just kind of how like Santa Claus and Krampus played a role in this whole Christmas tradition and how it ties to like Norse mythology, but I felt like the plot fell a little flat more towards the end. The feud between Krampus and Santa Claus, the resolution to that feud towards the end, I felt like was very lackluster. Also, Jesse's struggle, like how he was struggling, the stuff he was dealing with, was actually interesting to read about, but the resolution to his struggle was pretty lackluster too. And I did enjoy the atmosphere of this book. I felt like, oh my god, I'm so sorry if you hear that. Somebody cutting the lawn. I feel like the atmosphere was so good, like you really could feel the cold and harshness of winter. Majority of the time when I read this book, I was covered by a blanket, and it felt like the perfect way to read this book, because you really did feel like that biting, harsh, cold winter that the characters are dealing with. I definitely was not a fan of Krampus. Like, his character was not my favorite. It's kind of ridiculous because he's supposed to be this god with a lot of abilities, and you know, he's ancient and whatnot, but he acted like a child throwing a tantrum because Santa Claus took something away from him. So that's what it felt like. But overall, good book, enjoyed it, but I did like Slewfoot a little bit more. Alright guys, so that's all I have. Let me know if you read any of those books that I've mentioned. Let me know what you're reading right now, and hopefully you have a very safe holiday season, and if you're not celebrating the holidays, please just have a safe end of the year, because during this time things can get a little crazy and a little unsafe. So just take care of each other and take care of yourself. Bye.